Have you ever been looked at like you were nothing? Like you were just dirt on the bottom of an expensive shoe? For Rose, a struggling waitress at the city's most exclusive restaurant, this wasn't a fear. It was her Friday night reality. She was cornered, accused of a crime she didn't commit by a couple dripping in designer brands. They thought they had the power. They thought they could ruin her life just for sport. But they didn't know that the quiet old man sitting in the corner, nursing a glass of tap water, was about to teach them a lesson that money can't buy. You are not going to believe who he really is. This is the story of how arrogance met its match. The air inside l'Orangerie didn't smell like food. It smelled like old money. It was a scent composed of beeswax polish on mahogany floors, fresh white lilies flown in from Holland, and the faint metallic tang of heavy silverware. For Rose, it smelled like anxiety. She adjusted her apron in the reflection of the brass waiter's station, smoothing down the starch-stiff fabric. Her hands were trembling slightly. Not much, just a subtle tremor in her fingers that she prayed the customers wouldn't notice. She had been pulling double shifts for 3 weeks straight. Her feet, encased in cheap, black, non-slip shoes that she had colored in with a Sharpie to hide the scuffs, throbbed with a dull, rhythmic pain. "Table 4 needs water, Rose." "Move it," Julian, the floor manager, hissed as he walked past her. Julian was a man who sweated profusely regardless of the temperature. He wore suits that were slightly too tight, creating the impression that he was constantly on the verge of bursting out of them. He was terrified of the clientele, which made him a tyrant to the staff. "Yes, Julian." "Right away," Rose whispered, grabbing the crystal pitcher. She moved through the dining room with the practiced grace of a dancer, a skill she had honed not in a studio, but dodging scalding pans in the kitchen. L'Orangerie was the kind of place where the menu didn't have prices. If you had to ask, you couldn't afford the lobster thermidor or the Wagyu beef flown in from the Hyogo prefecture in Japan. Rose needed this job. She needed it with a desperation that sat heavy in her chest like a stone. Her mother's surgery was scheduled for the end of the month. The insurance covered 60%. The other 40% was entirely on Rose. Every tip, every extra shift, every moment of swallowing her pride when a customer snapped their fingers at her. It was all for that surgery. "Excuse me," a voice droned from table 7. It was a woman with hair so blonde it looked almost white, pulled back in a bun so tight it pulled her eyebrows upward. "My water is room temperature. I specifically asked for ice." "I apologize, ma'am," Rose said softly, bowing her head. "I will replace it immediately." "Don't just apologize. Fix it. God, it's so hard to find competent help these days," the woman muttered to her husband, loud enough for Rose to hear. Rose retreated to the kitchen, letting the heavy velvet curtains swallow the sound of clinking crystal. She leaned against the stainless steel counter for a split second, closing her eyes. "Rough night?" asked Marco, the sous chef, as he plated a truffle risotto. "The usual," Rose managed a tired smile. "Just have to make it to midnight. Julian said we have VIPs coming in at 8 p.m. He's having a panic attack about it." "Rich folks," Marco scoffed, wiping a plate with a pristine cloth. "They eat the same food. They just complain louder about it. Keep your head down, kid." Rose nodded and refilled the pitcher with ice. She didn't hate the rich. She just didn't understand them. To throw away more money on a bottle of wine than she made in 3 months seemed like a different universe. At 7:55 p.m., the atmosphere in the restaurant shifted. It was a palpable tension, like the air pressure dropping before a storm. Julian was practically vibrating by the host stand. "They're here," Julian whispered into his headset. "Everyone, look sharp. No mistakes tonight. This is a high-profile reservation." Rose watched from the shadows of the service station. The heavy oak doors swung open. First came the scent, an overpowering wave of Tom Ford cologne and heavy perfume. Then came the couple. The man, Marcus, looked like he had been cut out of a magazine about yacht ownership. He wore a navy blazer with gold buttons, loafers with no socks, and on his wrist sat a Patek Philippe Nautilus, a watch worth more than the house Rose grew up in. He walked with a swagger that suggested he owned the floorboards beneath his feet. On his arm was Tiffany. She was stunning in a terrifying way. She wore a red dress that looked like it was made of liquid silk, and she carried a Hermes Birkin Himalaya bag, the kind made of Nile crocodile hide, dyed to look like snowy mountains. It was the holy grail of handbags, worth upwards of $200,000. They didn't wait to be seated. They just walked past the host stand. "Mr. Sterling's table!" Marcus barked at Julian without making eye contact. "We requested the corner booth, the private one." Julian bowed so low he almost tipped over. "Of course, Mr. Marcus. Right this way. We have prepared the best spot in the house for you." Rose felt a knot form in her stomach. That was her section. She was going to have to serve them. She took a deep breath, gripping her serving tray. "Just think of the surgery," she told herself. "Just think of Mum." As the couple sat down, Tiffany placed the crocodile bag on the empty chair next to her, as if it were a person. She looked around the restaurant, her lip curling in a sneer. "It's a bit dim in here, isn't it, Marcus?" she complained, her voice shrill. "And the tablecloth looks like it hasn't been ironed properly." "I'll have them change it, babe," Marcus said, snapping his fingers loudly. The sound echoed through the quiet room. He didn't look for a waiter. He just snapped into the air, assuming someone would materialize. Rose stepped forward. "Good evening. Welcome to l'Orangerie. My name is Rose, and I will be taking care of you tonight." Marcus looked at her. He didn't look at her face. He looked at her shoes, then her apron, then her hands. He looked at her like she was a stain on the scenery. "We'll start with the 1982 Chateau Petrus," Marcus said, ignoring her introduction completely. "And bring the caviar service, the beluga, not the domestic trash." "Certainly, sir," Rose said, writing it down. "And wait," Tiffany interrupted. She narrowed her eyes at Rose. "Are your hands clean? I saw you touching the side of the table." Rose felt the blood rush to her face. Yes, ma'am. I wash my hands constantly." "I can assure you, just go wash them again." Tiffany waved a hand dismissively, her diamond bracelets clattering. "I don't want peasant germs on my crystal." Rose froze. The insult was so sharp, so casual. "Did you hear her?" Marcus barked. "Go, and be quick about it." Rose turned on her heel, fighting the burning sensation in her eyes. She walked to the kitchen, past Julian, who was glaring at her as if it were her fault, and stood over the sink. She scrubbed her hands until they were red and raw. "It's just money," she thought, watching the soapy water swirl down the drain. "They have money, but they don't have manners. Just get through the night." She didn't know that the night wasn't just going to be hard. It was going to be a nightmare. By the time Rose returned to the table, Marcus and Tiffany were already loud. They had drawn the attention of several other diners, but nobody dared to say anything. Their aura of aggressive wealth acted like a force field. Rose presented the wine bottle, cradling the Chateau Petrus like a newborn baby. This bottle alone cost $5,000. One slip, and she would be paying for it for the rest of her life. "The cork," Marcus commanded. Rose deftly uncorked the bottle and poured a small amount for tasting. Marcus swirled it violently, took a sip, and gargled it loudly before swallowing. "It's adequate," he grunted. Pour. As Rose poured Tiffany's glass, the woman suddenly shifted in her seat, throwing her arm out to gesture at something. Her elbow knocked Rose's hand. A single red drop of the expensive wine flew through the air and landed, not on Tiffany's dress, but on the white linen tablecloth, about 3 inches from her Hermes bag. Tiffany gasped, as if she had been shot. The room went silent. "You clumsy idiot!" Tiffany shrieked, jumping up. "You almost ruined my Birkin. Do you have any idea what this is worth? It's worth more than your entire life." I am so sorry, ma'am," Rose stammered, her heart hammering against her ribs. "You moved your arm and I—" "Don't you dare blame me!" Tiffany's face twisted into a mask of ugly rage. "Marcus, did you hear her? She's blaming me for her incompetence." Marcus slammed his hand on the table. "Get the manager, now." Julian materialized instantly, sweating bullets. "Is there a problem, Mr. Marcus? Madame Tiffany?" "This girl," Marcus pointed a thick finger at Rose, "is a disaster. She nearly destroyed a $200,000 bag. She's shaking. Is she on drugs? She looks like a junkie." Rose recoiled. "No, sir, I swear I'm not—" "Silence!" Julian snapped at Rose. He turned to the couple, his voice dripping with oil. "I am terribly sorry. I will take over your service personally. The meal is on the house tonight, of course, and I will open a bottle of our finest vintage champagne, complimentary." "Get her out of my sight," Tiffany hissed, sitting back down and dramatically checking her bag for invisible spots. "She ruins the ambiance." "Rose, kitchen. Now," Julian ordered quietly, his eyes cold. Rose walked back to the kitchen, her legs feeling like jelly. She leaned against the counter near the dishwasher, trying to control her breathing. She couldn't lose this job. Not now, not with the surgery 2 weeks away. "Hey," a gentle voice came from the service door. Rose looked up. It was an old man. She hadn't noticed him come in. He was sitting at a small, 2-top table near the kitchen doors, the worst seat in the house, usually reserved for walk-ins when the restaurant was full. He looked completely out of place. He wore a tweed jacket that had elbow patches and looked like it had been bought in the 1990s. His white hair was messy, and he was reading a paperback book. "I saw what happened," the old man said softly. He had kind eyes, surrounded by deep wrinkles. "She bumped you. It wasn't your fault." Rose wiped a tear from her cheek. "Thank you, sir. But it doesn't matter. The customer is always right." "Not always," the old man smiled. "Can I get a glass of water?" "Just tap is fine. I don't want to bother anyone." "Of course," Rose said, grateful for the distraction. She poured him a glass of water. "Are you waiting for someone?" "No, just me tonight," he said. "I'll just have the soup of the day. Whatever is easiest." "I'll bring it right out," Rose said. There was something calming about him. He was the polar opposite of the couple at table 4. For the next hour, Rose was banished to the back, polishing silverware. She watched from a distance as Julian fawned over Marcus and Tiffany. They devoured 3 courses. They laughed loudly. They treated the restaurant like their personal playground. Around 9:30 p.m., the couple finished their dessert. Rose saw Marcus lean in and whisper something to Tiffany. Tiffany giggled, a malicious sound. Then, Tiffany did something strange. Rose was watching through the small circular window in the kitchen door. She saw Tiffany look left, then right. Julian was at the computer terminal. The other waiters were busy. Tiffany slipped her hand into her pocket, pulled out a stunning diamond ring, a massive yellow canary diamond that caught the light like a star, and slid it under the rim of her empty dessert plate. Then she placed her napkin over the plate. Rose frowned. Why would she do that? Moments later, Tiffany let out a scream that curdled the blood of everyone in the restaurant. "My ring! My engagement ring! It's gone!" The restaurant froze. The music seemed to stop. "What?" Marcus stood up, knocking his chair over. "The canary diamond? The one I just insured for $500,000? It was on my finger," Tiffany cried, fake tears instantly springing to her eyes. "I took it off for a second to put lotion on my hands because the soap here is so dry, and I set it right here on the table. Now it's gone." Julian rushed over, his face pale as a sheet. "Madame, are you sure? Perhaps it fell on the floor." "I've looked," Tiffany screamed. "It's not on the floor. Someone took it." She spun around, her eyes scanning the room like a predator. Then her gaze locked on the kitchen door where Rose was standing. "Her!" Tiffany pointed a manicured finger straight at the window. "That waitress, the clumsy one. She came by to clear the bread plates a few minutes ago. She was hovering over the table." Rose's heart stopped. She hadn't been near the table in an hour. "Bring her out here," Marcus roared. "Nobody leaves this restaurant. Lock the doors." Julian stormed into the kitchen. He didn't ask questions. He grabbed Rose by the arm, hard. "Come with me," he snarled. "Julian, you can't be serious," Rose pleaded as he dragged her out. "I haven't been near them. I've been polishing forks." "Tell it to the police," Julian said. He dragged her into the center of the dining room. The entire restaurant was watching. The old man in the tweed jacket lowered his book, his eyes narrowing sharply. Marcus stepped up to Rose, looming over her. He smelled of wine and aggression. "Where is it?" he demanded. "Give it back, and maybe I won't have you thrown in jail for the rest of your miserable life." "I don't have it," Rose cried, her voice shaking. "I didn't take anything. Please check the table again." "We checked the table," Tiffany sobbed, clinging to Marcus. "She stole it. I saw her eyeing it earlier. She was jealous of my bag, and now she's taken my ring. Look at her shoes, Marcus. She's poor. She probably needs the money for drugs." "Search her," Marcus commanded Julian. "Sir, I can't legally—" Julian started. "I said search her," Marcus yelled. "Or I will buy this place and fire you myself." "Empty your pockets, Rose," Julian said, his voice cold. "Turn them out. Now." Rose felt a hot tear roll down her cheek. This was it. The ultimate humiliation. With shaking hands, she reached into her apron pockets. Rose's hands shook so violently that she struggled to get her hands inside the pockets of her apron. The restaurant was dead silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator units in the distance, and the heavy breathing of Marcus, who stood over her like an executioner waiting for the axe to drop. "I said empty them," Marcus roared, causing a woman at a nearby table to jump. Slowly, Rose pulled the lining of her pockets inside out. The contents spilled onto the polished mahogany floor with a pathetic clatter. It wasn't diamonds. It was the debris of a working-class life. A cheap plastic Waitress Pal corkscrew, 2 blue ballpoint pens, 1 leaking ink, a small crinkled notepad filled with shorthand orders, med rare, no onions, allergy T3, and finally, her tips from the early shift. A crumpled wad of $5 bills and a few quarters. Tiffany looked down at the pile and let out a short, cruel laugh. "Look at that. Disgusting. Carrying around dirty cash right next to the food? It's unsanitary." "There's no ring," Rose whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. She looked up at Julian, pleading with her eyes. "Julian, please. You know me. I've worked here for 2 years. I've never stolen a sugar packet, let alone a diamond." Julian looked away, unable to meet her gaze. He was wiping sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. "She has a locker," Julian said, his voice trembling. "In the back, and a backpack." "Get it," Marcus commanded. "Bring everything she owns out here. I want to see it all." No, Rose gasped. That's private. You can't just— I can do whatever I want. Marcus leaned in, his face inches from hers. I am the victim here. You are the criminal. Unless you want me to call the police right now and have them strip search you in a holding cell, you will let my friend Julian here bring your bag. Rose slumped. She felt stripped bare, her dignity evaporating in the climate-controlled air of the dining room. She nodded, defeated. Minutes later, Julian returned holding Rose's backpack. It was an old JanSport, faded navy blue with a frayed strap that she had repaired with duct tape. It looked alien in the opulent dining room, a stark reminder of the world outside the restaurant's golden doors. Marcus grabbed the bag from Julian. He didn't unzip it carefully. He upended it, shaking the contents onto the table where they had just eaten their appetizers. Heavy textbooks slammed onto the table. Principles of Nursing, Vol 4, and Human Anatomy. A Tupperware container with a half-eaten sandwich, a spare uniform, and a stack of envelopes bound by a rubber band. Studying to be a nurse, huh? Marcus sneered, flipping through the anatomy book. I wouldn't want you touching me in a hospital. You'd probably steal my kidneys. Tiffany reached out and snatched the stack of envelopes. She snapped the rubber band and began reading them. Tiffany, please don't, Rose cried out, stepping forward. Those are personal. Oh, shut up, Tiffany said, scanning the papers. Her eyes lit up with malicious glee. Well, 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 look what we have here, Marcus. She held up a piece of paper for the room to see. It was a bill from St. Jude's Medical Center. Final notice, Tiffany read aloud, projecting her voice like an actress on stage. Past due amount, $40,200. Immediate payment required to continue treatment for Mrs. Maria Gomez. Tiffany lowered the paper and smirked at Rose. Your mother is sick? Boo-hoo. Everyone has a sob story. That's why she did it, Marcus announced, pointing a finger at the bill. Motive. She's drowning in debt. She saw the ring, saw a way out, and took it. It's a classic desperation play. The diners whispered among themselves. The narrative was compelling. The poor waitress, the sick mother, the crushing debt. It made sense. Even some of the regulars who knew Rose looked at her with suspicion now. I didn't take it, Rose screamed, the dam finally breaking. I am working 3 jobs to pay that bill. I am honest. I would never steal to pay for my mother's life. Liar, Marcus hissed. He turned to Julian. She obviously handed it off to someone in the kitchen, or she swallowed it. Call the cops. I want her arrested. I want her charged. And I want this place shut down for harboring thieves. I will call them, Julian stammered, reaching for the phone at the host stand. Wait. The word was spoken softly, but it carried a weight that cut through the noise. The old man in the tweed jacket stood up. He hadn't finished his soup. He carefully placed his napkin on the table and walked toward the center of the room. He moved slowly, favoring his left leg, but his posture was upright, almost military. Who is this? Marcus asked, looking the old man up and down with a look of utter revulsion. Grandpa, sit down. This doesn't concern you. It concerns me, the old man said. His voice was gravelly, textured by age. Because I am trying to enjoy my dinner, and I don't enjoy watching bullies torture a young woman. Bullies? Tiffany scoffed. We are the victims. She stole $500,000 from me. She didn't steal anything, the old man said calmly. He stopped a few feet from Marcus. Up close, the contrast was striking. Marcus was tanned, manicured, and expensive. The old man looked like he bought his clothes at a thrift store. But the old man's eyes were sharp, blue and piercing like shattered ice. And how would you know, old man? Marcus stepped into the old man's personal space, trying to intimidate him. Are you in on it? Is she your granddaughter? Or maybe you're the fence waiting to sell the diamond?" The old man didn't flinch. He didn't back down an inch. "I know she didn't take it because I have been watching this room for the last hour. I watch people. It's a habit. And I saw exactly what happened." "Oh, really?" Marcus laughed, looking around at the other diners for validation. "We have a witness, ladies and gentlemen. Inspector Gadget here cracked the case." "I did," the old man said. He turned his gaze to Tiffany. Tiffany shifted uncomfortably, clutching her Birkin bag. "Stop staring at me, you creep." "You," the old man said to Tiffany, "were complaining about the dry soap in the restroom earlier. You took the ring off, but you didn't put it on the table." "I did," Tiffany shrieked. "No," the old man shook his head. "You slipped it under the dessert plate, the one that is still sitting right there, and then you covered the plate with your napkin." The room went deadly quiet. Everyone looked at table 4. The dirty dessert plate was indeed covered by a white linen napkin. "That's a lie!" Tiffany yelled, her face turning a blotchy red. "He's lying! He's senile! Marcus, get him away from me!" "You heard her," Marcus growled, grabbing the old man's lapel. "Get lost, old-timer, before I hurt you." "Touch me again," the old man said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerously low, "and you will regret it for the rest of your very short career." There was something in the old man's tone, an absolute, terrifying confidence that made Marcus hesitate. He let go of the lapel, wiping his hand on his pants as if the tweed was infectious. "Julian!" Marcus barked. "Check the plate. Prove this senile fool wrong so we can send this girl to jail." Julian looked at Marcus, then at the old man, then at Rose. He walked over to table 4. His hands were shaking so bad the silverware rattled. "Do it!" Marcus screamed. Julian reached out. He pinched the corner of the white napkin. He pulled it away. There, sitting in the shadow of the china plate, glittering under the dim ambient lights, was the canary diamond ring. A collective gasp swept through the restaurant. It was as if the oxygen had been sucked out of the room and then rushed back in all at once. Rose brought her hands to her mouth, a sob escaping her throat. It was there. She was safe. Julian stared at the ring, his mouth hanging open. It's here. Mr. Marcus. It was here the whole time." Marcus stared at the ring. His face went through a complex series of contortions. Shock, confusion, and then, instantly, defensive anger. He turned to Tiffany. "You said you looked everywhere," Marcus yelled at her. I thought I did," Tiffany stammered. She stood up, grabbing the ring and shoving it back onto her finger. She regained her composure with frightening speed. She tossed her hair back and looked at Rose with a look of pure venom. Well, she must have put it there. "Excuse me," Rose said, stunned. "You heard me," Tiffany sneered. "You realized you were going to get caught, so you snuck it back under the plate while we were arguing. Or maybe you," she pointed at the old man, "you put it there. You're clearly working together." "That is physically impossible," the old man said dryly. "I haven't moved from my chair until 2 minutes ago, and Rose has been standing in the center of the room, being humiliated by you, for 10 minutes. It doesn't matter." Marcus waved his hand dismissively. "The ring is found. No harm, no foul. Let's go, Tiffany. This place is a dump anyway. The service is horrendous, the clientele is trash." He gestured at the old man, "and the staff are incompetent." He threw a black American Express card onto the table. "Julian, charge it, and add a 0% tip. Come on, Tiffany." They started to walk away, gathering their coats, acting as if they hadn't just tried to destroy a woman's life. "No," the old man said. Marcus stopped. He turned around slowly. "Excuse me." "Pick up your card," the old man said. "I'm paying the bill. Be grateful I'm paying at all," Marcus spat. "You aren't paying," the old man said. He walked over to the table and picked up the black card. He held it between two fingers. "And you aren't leaving?" "Not yet." "Give me my card!" Marcus lunged for it, but the old man pulled it back with surprising speed. "You accused this young woman of a felony," the old man said, his voice rising, projecting to the entire room. "You humiliated her. You exposed her private medical history to strangers. You made her empty her pockets like a common criminal. And now you think you can just walk away?" "I can do whatever the hell I want," Marcus sneered. "Do you know who I am? I am the regional vice president of Vanguard Global. I make more in a week than you made in your entire life. I could buy this block. I could buy you." The old man smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a wolf watching a sheep walk into a trap. "Vanguard Global," the old man repeated, tasting the words. "Big firm, private equity, real estate. Very impressive." "Yeah, that's right," Marcus puffed out his chest. "So give me my card. Go back to your soup and shut your mouth before I make a call and have your pension fund liquidated." The siren started then. Red and blue lights flashed through the front windows of the restaurant. 2 police officers walked in, looking serious. "We got a call about a grand larceny," the first officer, a tall man named Sergeant Miller, said. He looked around the room. "Who is the accuser?" "I am," Marcus said, stepping forward and flashing his expensive watch. "But it's resolved. We found the ring. Just a misunderstanding. The waitress," he pointed at Rose, "tried to hide it, but we recovered it. We're leaving." "Hold on," Sergeant Miller said. "We received a second call from inside the restaurant about a disturbance of the peace and filing a false police report." "What?" Tiffany shrieked. "We didn't call you." "I did," the old man said. He stepped forward, holding Marcus's credit card. "Officer," the old man said, "these 2 individuals attempted to frame this young woman for theft. I witnessed the woman," he pointed at Tiffany, "plant the item. When their plan to get her arrested failed, they became belligerent." "He's lying," Marcus shouted. "Officer, look at him! He's a crazy old hobo! Arrest him!" Sergeant Miller looked at the old man. He squinted. Then his eyes went wide. He took a step back, his hand instinctively going to the brim of his cap. Mr. Carrington?" the officer stammered. The room went silent again. Marcus froze. "Who?" "Mr. Arthur Carrington," the officer said, his voice filled with reverence. "Sir, I didn't know you were in town. The chief said you were at your estate in the Hamptons." "Arthur Carrington?" Julian, the manager, whispered the name like a prayer. He dropped the menu he was holding. Rose looked at the old man. She knew that name. Everyone knew that name. Arthur Carrington was the Oracle of Wall Street. He was a billionaire philanthropist, a man who owned half the skyline of the city. He was known for 2 things: his ruthlessness in business and his reclusiveness. He hadn't been photographed in public in 5 years, and he was the majority shareholder of Vanguard Global. Marcus went pale. A sickly, grey colour washed over his tan face. "Carrington? No, that's impossible. Arthur Carrington is... He doesn't look like that." Arthur Carrington reached into the inside pocket of his tweed jacket. He didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a pair of reading glasses and a sleek, black smartphone. "Officer Miller, is it?" Arthur asked. "Yes, sir. An honour, sir," the policeman said. "Thank you for coming so quickly," Arthur said. He turned to Marcus. He held up Marcus's black Amex card. "Marcus Sterling, Regional VP for Vanguard. Is that correct? I... Marcus's voice failed him. His knees were actually knocking together. I know Vanguard very well, Arthur said conversationally. I founded the parent company that acquired Vanguard 3 years ago. I believe I still sit on the board. In fact, I believe I have the CEO, David Solomon, on speed dial. Arthur tapped his phone screen. He put it on speaker. The ringtone echoed through the silent restaurant. 1 ring. 2 rings. Arthur? A booming voice came from the phone. To what do I owe the pleasure? It's late. David, Arthur said, his eyes locked on Marcus's terrified face. I'm currently dining at l'Orangerie. I've just had the most unpleasant experience with one of your regional VPs, a Mr. Marcus Sterling. Marcus, the CEO's voice sounded confused. Is he there? What did he do? He's here, Arthur said. He just attempted to frame a waitress for grand larceny because she spilled a drop of wine near his girlfriend's bag. He then proceeded to verbally assault the staff, threaten me, and display a level of moral bankruptcy that I find incompatible with the values of my company. He did what? The CEO's voice turned to ice. He also claimed, Arthur continued, smiling grimly, that he could buy me. Tell me, David, does a regional VP salary cover the purchase of Arthur Carrington? Arthur, the CEO said, put him on the phone. Arthur extended the phone toward Marcus. Marcus was trembling so hard he could barely hold the device. Mr. Solomon, sir, I can explain. It's a misunderstanding. I didn't know it was him. He looked like a bum. Shut up, Marcus, the CEO roared. You are fired, effective immediately. Hand in your company car, your keys, and your laptop by 9:00 a.m. tomorrow. If you set foot in the office, security will escort you out. And Marcus? Yes. Yes, sir? Marcus squeaked, tears streaming down his face. If Mr. Carrington decides to press charges for harassment or filing a false report, the company will not be providing you with legal counsel. You are on your own. The line went dead. Arthur took the phone back from Marcus's limp hand. Marcus looked like he was going to vomit. Tiffany had backed away from him, looking at him with disgust, as if his unemployment was a contagious disease. Arthur turned to the police officer. Officer, I would like to press charges for attempted extortion and filing a false police report. I have 5 witnesses here. He gestured to the other diners, who were all nodding eagerly. Who saw the whole thing? Understood, sir, Officer Miller said. He pulled out his handcuffs. Mr. Sterling, turn around and place your hands behind your back. And the lady, Arthur added, pointing at Tiffany. She's the one who planted the ring. Accomplice. No, Marcus made me do it, Tiffany screamed as the second officer grabbed her arm. He said we could get a free meal. Don't touch my baug. It's a Birkin. It's evidence now, ma'am, the officer said, clicking the cuffs on her wrists. As the police dragged the screaming, crying couple out of the restaurant, the dining room erupted into applause. People stood up and cheered. Rose stood in the middle of it all, stunned. She looked at Arthur Carrington. The billionaire adjusted his tweed jacket, looked at her, and offered a gentle, grandfatherly smile. I believe, Arthur said, that my soup is cold. And I think you mentioned earlier that you are studying to be a nurse. Rose nodded, unable to speak. Well, Arthur said, pull up a chair, my dear. We have things to discuss. And Julian? The manager jumped. Yes, Mr. Carrington. Anything. Bring us a bottle of your best champagne, Arthur said, and bring the check. I'm buying the restaurant. The restaurant was still buzzing, a low hum of whispers circulating like a draft. The air felt different now, lighter, yet charged with an electric current of awe. The police cruiser lights had faded into the distance, taking the toxicity of Marcus and Tiffany with them, but the impact of their departure remained. Rose sat on the edge of the velvet chair opposite Arthur Carrington. She felt like an imposter. 10 minutes ago, she was a suspected thief about to be strip-searched. Now she was sitting across from the most powerful man in the city, and a bottle of Dom Perignon was chilling in a silver bucket beside them. Julian approached the table. He looked like a man walking to the gallows. His earlier arrogance had evaporated, replaced by a trembling, sweaty obsequiousness that was painful to watch. "Mr. Carrington," Julian's voice cracked. "Here is the champagne, the 1998 vintage, on the house, of course. And might I say, it is a tremendous honor to have you." Arthur didn't look up. He picked up his spoon and took a sip of his lukewarm soup. "The soup is cold, Julian." I will have the chef make a fresh batch immediately," Julian stammered, reaching for the bowl. "Leave it," Arthur said, his voice sharp. He finally looked up, his blue eyes boring into the manager. "I don't care about the soup. I care about how you run this establishment." Julian swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Sir, about before, with the police, I was just following protocol. Mr. Sterling was a VIP customer. I had to—" "Protocol?" Arthur interrupted, raising an eyebrow. "Is it protocol to humiliate your staff? Is it protocol to assume guilt based on income? You were ready to destroy this young woman's life to please a man just because he wears a loud watch." I didn't know," Julian whispered, looking at the floor. "That is the problem," Arthur said. "You looked at his suit and assumed he was important. You looked at my jacket and assumed I was nobody. And you looked at Rose and assumed she was a thief. You measure people by the wrong metrics, Julian. And that makes you a poor leader." Arthur waved his hand dismissively. "Go away. I am talking to my guest." Julian slunk away into the shadows of the kitchen, defeated. Arthur turned his attention back to Rose. His expression softened instantly. "Drink, my dear. It helps with the shock." Rose took a small sip of the golden liquid. It tasted like apples and brioche, but she could barely taste it over the lump in her throat. "Mr. Carrington," she started, her voice shaking. "I don't know how to thank you. You saved me. I would be in a cell right now if you hadn't—" "I didn't save you, Rose," Arthur said gently. "I just told the truth. Something that seems to be in short supply these days." He leaned back, studying her. "Now, tell me about this bill, the one that terrible woman read out loud." Rose looked down at her hands. It's my mother. She has a heart condition. Mitral valve prolapse. She needs a valve replacement. It's a routine surgery, but the specialists are expensive, and our insurance cap was reached months ago. St. Jude's won't operate until the arrears are cleared." "And you're working 3 jobs?" Arthur asked. "Here at night," Rose nodded. "I work at a diner in the mornings, and I tutor high school kids in biology on weekends, and I'm trying to finish my nursing degree." Arthur nodded slowly, a look of profound sadness crossing his face. "Nursing. That is a noble profession. My wife, Catherine, she was a nurse. Before I made my money, before Vanguard, before all of this, she was the one who paid our rent. She came home with aching feet every night, smelling of antiseptic, and she never complained. Not once." He looked at Rose, and for a second, he wasn't a billionaire. He was just a man missing someone he loved. "She passed away 10 years ago," Arthur said quietly. "Cancer. All the money in the world couldn't stop it. But the nurses who sat with her, who held her hand when I couldn't be there, they were angels. You remind me of them." He reached into his jacket pocket again and pulled out a checkbook. It was a simple, leather-bound book. He uncapped a fountain pen. "What was the amount?" Arthur asked. 14,000? "Mr. Carrington." "No," Rose gasped, reaching out to stop him. "I can't take your money. I didn't tell you this for charity. I will work. I will pay it off." "I know you will," Arthur smiled, continuing to write. "You have grit. I saw you standing there, terrified, but you didn't break. You kept your dignity. That is rare." He tore the check out and slid it across the white tablecloth. Rose looked at it. She gasped. It wasn't for $14,000. It was for $100,000. This is too much," Rose whispered, tears spilling onto her cheeks. "This is a mistake. You added a zero." "No mistake," Arthur said firmly. 14,000 for the bill. The rest is for you. Quit the diner job. Quit the tutoring. Finish your degree. The world needs more nurses like you, Rose. Consider it an investment. I expect a return on it. I expect you to be the best damn nurse in this city." Rose couldn't speak. She just held the piece of paper, her hands trembling, sobbing quietly. The weight of 3 years of struggle, of sleepless nights, of fear, it was all lifted in a second. "Thank you," she choked out. "I promise I won't let you down." "I know," Arthur said. He took another sip of water. "Now, dry your tears. We have one more piece of business to attend to. I believe I mentioned something about buying this restaurant." "I thought you were joking," Rose said, wiping her eyes with the linen napkin. "Arthur Carrington never jokes about real estate," he said with a twinkle in his eye. "And I have a very specific idea for management. Watch this." At that moment, the heavy oak front doors swung open again. This time, a short, rotund man in a tuxedo came running in, breathless. It was Pierre, the owner of l'Orangerie. He looked like he had run all the way from his house. "Mr. Carrington," Pierre gasped, rushing to the table. "I came as soon as Julian called. My God, I am so sorry. I had no idea you were dining with us. This is a disaster." Arthur remained seated. "Pierre, good to see you. You look like you've put on weight." Pierre stood by the table, wringing his hands, sweat beading on his forehead. "Mr. Carrington, please. Julian told me what happened. It is inexcusable. I will apologize to the press. I will comp your meal for the next year. Just please, do not destroy us. A bad word from you. We would be finished." Arthur looked at the owner calmly. "Pierre, you have always been a decent chef, but you are a terrible judge of character. You hired Julian. You let him turn this place into a snob's paradise. I used to like coming here because the risotto was honest. Now, it tastes like pretension." I can change it," Pierre pleaded. "I will fire Julian." "Oh, Julian is definitely fired," Arthur said. "But that's not enough. You see, Pierre, I don't just want an apology. I want the keys." Pierre blinked. "The keys?" "I want to buy the restaurant," Arthur stated. "Lock, stock, and barrel. The building, the brand, the wine cellar, everything." But it's not for sale," Pierre protested. "This is my legacy." "Everything is for sale, Pierre," Arthur said. He picked up his napkin and wrote a number on the back of it. He slid it toward Pierre. "This is my offer. It is 20% above market value. It is a cash offer. The funds can be in your account by tomorrow morning." Pierre looked at the napkin. His eyes widened. He looked at the restaurant, then at the number, then at Arthur. It was an amount that would allow him to retire to the south of France and never work another day in his life. "Aye," Pierre stammered. "Valid. Valid until when?" "Valid for 30 seconds." Arthur checked his watch. After that, the price drops by $10,000 every second. Pierre didn't hesitate. Greed and relief warred on his face, and relief won. "Done! I accept. It's yours." "Excellent," Arthur said. "Now get out." "Excuse me?" Pierre asked. "You sold it. It's mine now. Leave. Take Julian with you." Arthur pointed to the kitchen door where Julian was peeking out. Pierre nodded frantically. He rushed to the kitchen, grabbed Julian by the collar, and within minutes, the former owner and the former manager were escorted out the back door, leaving the staff standing in the kitchen, confused and leaderless. Arthur stood up slowly, groaning slightly as his bad knee protested. He walked toward the kitchen doors. Rose followed him, unsure of what was happening. Arthur pushed the doors open. The kitchen staff, Marco the chef, the dishwashers, the prep cooks, all froze. They looked at the billionaire with wide, fearful eyes. "Gather round," Arthur said, his voice booming over the hiss of the steamers. The staff shuffled together, forming a semicircle. "My name is Arthur Carrington," he announced. "I am the new owner of this establishment." A murmur went through the group. "Things are going to change," Arthur continued. "First, the menu. No more overpriced tiny portions. We go back to real food. Second, the attitude. If I catch anyone sneering at a customer because of how they dress, you will be out the door faster than you can say, 'Unemployment.'" He paused, looking at the faces of the workers. They looked tired. They looked overworked. "And third," Arthur said, "salaries. Everyone here gets a 25% raise, effective immediately." The staff gasped. Marco dropped his ladle. "But," Arthur raised a finger, "I am a busy man. I run a global empire. I cannot be here every night to make sure the wine is chilled and the staff is treated with respect. I need a manager, someone who knows this place inside out, someone who knows what it's like to work the double shifts, someone who has integrity." Arthur turned slowly and looked at Rose. The entire kitchen staff turned to look at her too. "Rose," Arthur said, "how would you like a promotion?" Rose's jaw dropped. "Me?" "Mr. Carrington, I'm just a waitress. I don't know how to run a restaurant." "You know exactly how to run it," Arthur corrected her. "I watched you tonight. You handled the pressure. You treated the rudest customers with grace. You supported your team. You have the one thing Julian never had: empathy." "But—" "My nursing degree," Rose stammered. "Finish it," Arthur said. "Be a manager part-time. Hire an assistant. Delegate. Make your own schedule. But this place needs a heart, Rose. And you are the heart." Rose looked at Marco. Marco was grinning from ear to ear, giving her a thumbs up. She looked at the dishwasher, a young kid who always looked terrified of Julian. He was beaming at her. Rose took a deep breath. She stood taller. "I accept. But only if Marco gets full creative control of the menu." "Done," Arthur laughed. "I love a tough negotiator." The kitchen erupted in cheers. The cooks started banging their spoons on the pots. It was a celebration of the underdog, a victory for every person who had ever been mistreated by a boss. Arthur walked back out into the dining room, leaving Rose to be hugged by her co-workers. He sat back down at his table and picked up his book. He wasn't just a billionaire. He was a force of nature, and he had just rewritten the destiny of everyone in the building. But the story wasn't quite over. Arthur checked his phone. He had one more message to send, a message to the press. If Marcus Sterling thought getting fired was the end of his bad night, he was wrong. Arthur was about to ensure that the name Marcus Sterling would be synonymous with cowardice across the entire country. 3 months later, the snow had melted from the city streets, replaced by the fresh bloom of spring. But the biggest change wasn't the season, it was l'orangerie. The heavy velvet curtains that used to block out the world were gone, replaced by sheer linen that let the golden afternoon light flood the dining room. The stiff, silent atmosphere was replaced by the soft hum of jazz and the sound of genuine laughter. Rose stood at the host stand. She wasn't wearing the oversized, starch-stiff apron anymore. She wore a tailored navy suit, her hair down in loose waves. She looked tired. Nursing school finals were next week, but her eyes were bright. "Table for two, certainly." She smiled at a young couple who looked nervous, clearly on a first date. They weren't wearing designer clothes. The boy was in a simple button-down shirt. "Right this way. Chef Marco has a special on the truffle pasta tonight. It's fantastic." She seated them at table 4, the very table where her life had almost ended. As she walked back to the front, she caught sight of a newspaper sitting on the bar counter. The headline was bold and black: "Fall from grace. Ex-Vanguard exec Marcus Sterling indicted on fraud charges." Rose picked it up. The article detailed how, after Arthur Carrington's public firing of Marcus went viral, auditors had looked closely at Marcus's accounts. It turned out that treating people like dirt wasn't his only vice. He had been skimming from client accounts for years to pay for his leased Ferraris and Tiffany's jewelry. He was facing 10 years in federal prison. As for Tiffany, the article mentioned she had filed for a restraining order against him and was currently being sued by the insurance company for attempted fraud regarding the ring. "Karma," a gravelly voice said from the door. Rose looked up, a beaming smile breaking across her face. "Mr. Carrington." Arthur stood there, looking exactly the same as the night they met, tweed jacket and all. But this time he wasn't alone. He was with a group of 4 other elderly men, all dressed in similar modest attire. "Rose, my dear," Arthur said, his eyes twinkling. "I brought friends. We're the board of directors for the evening. We're hungry and we're grumpy. Can you handle us?" "I think I can manage," Rose laughed, hugging the billionaire. It wasn't professional, perhaps, but nobody cared. "Your usual table is ready, and the soup is hot this time." "Good," Arthur grunted, though he was smiling. "How is Maria?" "She's amazing," Rose said, her voice softening. "She walked a mile yesterday. The doctors say her heart is stronger than it's been in 20 years. She wants to cook you dinner, Arthur. She won't stop asking." "Tell her I accept," Arthur said. "Next Tuesday. I'll bring the wine." As Arthur walked his friends to the table, Rose watched him go. She looked around the restaurant. It was full, not just with the wealthy elite, but with people from the neighborhood, with students celebrating graduation, with families. She touched the small pin on her lapel, a nursing pin. She would graduate next month. She would run this place in the evenings and heal people in the mornings. She remembered the fear she felt 3 months ago, the feeling of being small, the feeling of being invisible. She looked at the young couple at table 4. The boy had knocked over the salt shaker. He looked terrified, waiting to be scolded. Rose walked over, picked up the shaker, and smiled warmly. "Don't worry," she whispered. "It's just salt. It's bad luck if you don't throw some over your shoulder." The boy laughed, the tension breaking. Rose walked back to the kitchen where Marco was singing opera while stirring a pot of sauce. She was tired, yes, but for the first time in her life, she was free. The real billionaire hadn't just walked in and bought a restaurant. He had bought her a future, and he had taught the world a lesson that Marcus Sterling learned too late. True wealth isn't what you have in your pocket. It's how you treat the person who pours your water. And there you have it. Marcus and Tiffany thought their money made them untouchable, but they learned the hard way that character is the only currency that matters in the end. Rose went on to become a head nurse at St. Jude's, while still managing the restaurant that became a beacon of kindness in the city. It makes you think, doesn't it? Next time you see someone in a service job, a waiter, a cashier, a cleaner, remember Rose. Remember that everyone has a story, everyone has a struggle, and you never know who might be watching from the corner table. If this story moved you, or if you've ever dealt with a Marcus in your own life, hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to share this video with your friends. Let's spread a little more kindness today. Make sure you are subscribed and have the notification bell turned on so you don't miss our next story. Until next time, stay humble.